Carol Ledoux works at a beauty salon as a manicurist. She is shy and has difficulty communicating. At times it seems as though Carol lives in a world of her own, noticing what is happening around her only intermittently. Walking down the street during her break to grab a bite at a nearby cafe, Carol does not respond to the compliments of passing men. Colin, who has long taken notice of this attractive young woman, tries to ask her out on a date this evening, but Carol shyly replies that not this time, because she has promised to have dinner with her sister. Colin is forced to leave empty-handed. Carol lives with her older sister Helen Ledoux in a small London apartment. Carol is distant and often does not even hear what her sister is saying. Helen has a habit of putting her toothbrush and razor in Carol's glass, which irritates the latter. Helen reminds her that she will be leaving for 10 to 12 days, which means her sister will have to stay alone. This clearly worries her. Helen is seeing a man named Michael, who drops by from time to time. Carol does not like this man, at least because he is married. Today the sisters will not be having dinner together as planned, because Helen intends to spend the evening with Michael. He senses that Carol harbors hostility toward him and remarks on how strange and withdrawn she is. Moreover, Michael believes it might be a good idea for Carol to see a psychiatrist. Left alone in the apartment, Carol hears the unbearably loud dripping of water. It grates on her nerves. At night, Carol wakes up, hearing the voices of her sister and Michael, who have returned from the restaurant. They are in the next room. Carol would rather not hear what she is hearing now. The next morning she does not expect at all to see Michael in the bathroom. The presence of another man in the house makes her nervous. Michael does not even stay for breakfast because he is running late. Helen is upset that he will not give her a ride. In a hurry Michael hands her money for a taxi and leaves. Carol expresses her displeasure that Michael stayed the night. Helen replies that she has a right to a private life, and it's none of Carol's business. The phone rings. Carol picks up the receiver. It is the landlord, dissatisfied that Helen has still not paid the rent for this month. She is already 2 weeks late. Helen promises the landlord that her sister will bring him the money tomorrow. Carol would rather not meet the landlord in person, but Helen cannot do it herself, because she is going on vacation. She has been waiting for this for a long time. Carol goes to work at the salon. Her colleague Bridget is crying, because of a man who did not keep his promise. Carol finds it difficult to choose the right words in such situations, but she still tries in her own way to cheer Bridget up. Carol fears that her sister may meet the same fate, for it is obvious that Michael will sooner or later leave her. On her way home from work, the woman notices a crack in the pavement. Colin is upset that she did not show up for their date, even though they had agreed to have lunch together. Suddenly he notices her on the street. She is sitting on a bench and staring fixedly at the crack in the pavement. Colin approaches her and indignantly asks why she did not come to the restaurant. The woman looks confused, completely unable to remember that they had arranged a date. Colin's irritation turns into concern. He cannot help noticing that something is wrong with Carol and thinks that perhaps she has been fired from her job. The woman does not understand what could have led him to such thoughts. Obviously there will be no date today, and Colin offers to drive Carol home. She agrees to get into his car, but does not utter a single word during the entire ride. When Colin tries to kiss her, she pulls away. But Colin is persistent, and against Carol's wishes, does it anyway. She immediately runs out of his car. At home, the woman brushes her teeth for a long time thoroughly. Later, Helen finds her sister crying and assumes it is because of the upcoming trip. Helen tries to comfort Carol, when suddenly the phone rings. The woman picks up the receiver, but there is only silence on the other end of the line. Michael stays the night again. Carol cannot fall asleep, hearing their voices. At one point Helen enters Carol's room and asks why she threw away Michael's personal hygiene items. Carol only replies that she does not like them being in the bathroom. In the morning Helen says goodbye to her sister. Carol begs her not to leave. But of course Helen would not give up a vacation with Michael in Italy. The woman reminds her sister not to forget to pay the landlord, otherwise they will both end up on the street. The couple leaves, leaving Carol completely alone in the apartment. She goes to the salon, however she is unable to concentrate. Bridget chats with a client about men. The older woman says that the surest way to attract a man's attention is to ignore him. Men are only attracted to what they have to pursue. Carol does not react to anything or anyone around her, which worries Bridget. The owner of the salon, Madame Denise, decides to give Carol a day off. At home, she takes the rabbit Helen had cooked out of the refrigerator. Carol is distracted by a phone call. There is silence on the other end of the line. Trying to pull herself together, Carol washes her face with cold water. Then she combs her hair. Suddenly Carol notices Michael's unwashed clothes scattered across the bathroom. This makes her nauseous. Later in the kitchen, Carol hears a kind of cracking sound and sees a crack in the wall that had not been there before. When Carol takes one of Helen's dresses out of the wardrobe, She catches a glimpse for a brief moment of a dark figure flickering in the mirror. But there is quite certainly no one else in the room. Unable to fall asleep, Carol scratches the wall with her fingernail. Suddenly distinct footsteps are heard outside the door, as if someone were walking in high heels. The woman freezes in terror. In the morning, Carol gets ready for work as usual. Her condition grows increasingly unstable. She forgot to turn off the tap in the bathtub in time, and the water overflowed, flooding the entire floor. It becomes harder and harder for Carol to control herself, as she balances on the edge between reality and illusion. Carol feels as though the walls of the apartment keep cracking. At night, she hears footsteps outside her bedroom door again and again. But this time it goes too far. Someone bursts into the room and attacks Carol. Or at least she thinks so. In the morning, the woman lying on the floor wakes up to the sound of the phone ringing. It is Colin. She hangs up without saying anything to him. The kitchen is in disarray, dirty dishes and spoiled food. Madame Denise reprimands Carol for having missed 3 days of work without warning. Carol is surprised that 3 days have already passed. It is as if she has fallen out of time. The woman explains that she had been feeling unwell. Later, during a manicure, she withdraws into herself again and accidentally injures a client. Madame Denise is forced to send Carol home before the end of the working day. Concerned about her colleague's condition, Bridget helps Carol put on her coat and advises her to distract herself a little, for example by going to the cinema. A comedy with Charlie Chaplin would surely cheer her up. But Bridget's mood shifts abruptly when she finds a rabbit's head in Carol's handbag. Colin is driven nearly mad by his beloved's silence. All his calls go unanswered. His friends place bets on how much longer Carol will keep ignoring him. They are convinced she is doing it for personal gain, to make herself seem more valuable, as all women supposedly do. But Colin knows for certain that this is not the case. Something else is going on. Meanwhile, Carol walks down the street with an utterly detached expression. She notices neither passers-by nor cars. At home, the atmosphere grows increasingly unhealthy. Flies circle above the spoiled food, but Carol does not care about them. She is far more troubled by the cracking walls. When the woman touches them, the imprints of her palms remain on the surface. There is a knock at the door. It is Colin, who has followed her to her apartment. The woman refuses to open the door, but this does not stop Colin. She picks up a candlestick. Colin would not normally have gone this far, but he simply could not bear it any longer. Carol will not leave his mind. The man tries to find the right words to express his feelings for her. When Colin turns away to close the door, Carol strikes him with the candlestick, taking his life. She realizes too late what she has done. In panic, the woman barricades the door, nailing a board across it. Then Carol drags Colin's body into the bathtub. She sinks deeper and deeper into her own madness. At night, Carol experiences hallucinations again, as if someone were attacking her. In the morning, there is a knock at the door. It is the postman. Since no one answers, he pushes a postcard from Helen, sent from Italy, through the gap between the door and the floor. Carol discovers that Colin's body has disappeared from the bathtub. At that same moment, she feels as though hands are growing out of the walls and grabbing her. The next morning, Michael's wife calls and, mistaking Carol for Helen, insults her. Carol hangs up. When the phone rings again, the woman cuts the cord. The doorbell rings. It is the furious landlord. Carol has still not brought him the rent. He threatens to call the police if Carol does not open immediately. But she continues to remain silent. The man uses a spare key, but to no avail. Because of the barricade, the door will not give way. When the landlord finally manages to get inside, he finds Carol there, surrounded by flies and disorder. But what interests him most is why she has barricaded the door against him. Carol hands the man the money, wishing that he would leave as soon as possible. But the landlord cannot simply turn a blind eye to the damage to the property. At the sight and smell of the spoiled food, he cannot suppress his disgust. Still, the landlord is willing to forget about the rent and everything else if Carol reciprocates his advances. However, when the man becomes excessively insistent, she takes Michael's razor and takes the landlord's life. Thus Carol once again remains alone with her madness. She irons clothes without even plugging in the iron. Then the woman applies lipstick in front of the mirror. With each passing day, her psychosis intensifies. When Carol walks down the corridor of the apartment, hands emerge from the walls and reach for her, trying to seize her. Finally, Helen Ledoux and Michael return. While he parks the car, she enters the apartment and is horrified by the mess inside. But this is nothing compared to the two bodies. Helen screams just as Michael appears. In her hysteria, she can hardly explain anything to him. Yet there is no need, because he sees everything with his own eyes. They cannot even call the police, as the telephone cord has been cut. Michael knocks on the neighbor's door, but she has no phone either. The man then goes down to the concierge, while Helen finds Carol under the bed. Alarmed by the commotion, All the neighbors gather to see what is happening. Carol is in a state of catatonia. Michael returns and carries Carol out of the apartment in his arms. In the final scene, we see a family photograph capturing Carol as a child. She is looking with hostility at some man.